You're going to do exactly what I say, you insolent little black girl, or you can pack your things right now. Manager Kevin Torres gripped Natasha's arm harshly, dragging her toward the back corridor of Elegance, the city's most exclusive restaurant. Far from the eyes of security cameras, Natasha Williams, 28, never imagined her 2 years at Chicago's finest dining spot would end in humiliation, all because she refused to take a bribe from a powerful politician. Senator Richardson had left an envelope stuffed with $5,000, expecting her silence after catching Kevin manipulating receipts. Natasha's only reply had been calm but firm. "No. Please, Mr. Torres, let go of my arm," she said evenly, her composure only fueling his fury. "I won't take dirty money. Not now, not ever." Kevin's jaw tightened as he shoved her against the wall of the narrow hallway. "Listen here, you stuck-up little black girl. You think you're better than everyone else? You think you can lecture me?" His face flushed crimson. "You're just a waitress I took pity on. People like you should be thankful to even have a job." What Kevin didn't realize was that every word spilling from his mouth was being recorded. Natasha's phone, tucked discreetly in her apron, had captured it all. For 6 months, she had been quietly gathering evidence. Every racist comment, every illegal deal, every abuse of power inside that restaurant. "Let's have a private chat in the bathroom," Kevin sneered, squeezing her arm harder. "Maybe then you'll understand how things really work here." Natasha inhaled slowly, her calm unshaken. "You don't want to do that, Mr. Torres." "Oh, I don't." He laughed cruelly. "And who's going to stop me? Your little husband? That broke mechanic who can't even give you a proper life?" Then came a voice, cold and commanding, slicing through the air. "I'd suggest you let go of my wife, now." Kevin froze. From the shadows near the back door, a tall man in an immaculate suit stepped forward, flanked by 2 towering figures. His eyes were like ice. "Alejandro Moretti," Kevin breathed, his confidence vanishing. Everyone in Chicago knew the name, even if they'd never seen the man himself. Natasha's lips curved into the faintest smile. In 3 years of marriage, she had never once mentioned who her husband was. She'd wanted to succeed on her own without the weight of his reputation. But 2 hours earlier, when she sensed danger, she had called Alejandro, and now here he was. He stopped just a meter away, his voice calm yet lethal. "You have 3 seconds to explain why you're holding my wife." Kevin released her instantly, stumbling back. I didn't know, sir. It was all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Alejandro's head tilted slightly. "You dragged my wife into a camera-free hallway and called her an insolent little black girl. That sounds very deliberate." Natasha felt a quiet thrill of satisfaction. For months, she had endured Kevin's arrogance, his racist jabs disguised as jokes, his unwanted touches, his threats. He'd treated her as though she were disposable. Now, watching him tremble, she realized patience had been her most powerful weapon. "Your wife has been difficult lately," Kevin stammered, desperate to regain control. "Refusing to follow procedures." "Procedures like accepting bribes?" Natasha interrupted, pulling her phone from her apron. "You mean this recording? The one where you offered me $5,000 to stay silent about Senator Richardson's false receipts?" The color drained from Kevin's face. You recorded me." Natasha smiled, calm and deliberate. "Over the last 6 months, you've been recorded 43 times. Photographed 27 times, and mentioned in 62 reports that I've already sent to my husband." While Kevin mocked her, she had built an ironclad dossier, every bribe, every falsified document, every degrading remark carefully logged and time-stamped. "Did you really think," she said evenly, "that a black woman with a business degree from Northwestern, fluent in 4 languages, and holding a master's in hotel management, was just a desperate waitress with no options?" Kevin's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "But you never said—" "You thought what?" Natasha's tone sharpened. "That because I'm black, I should tolerate your humiliation? That because I serve tables, I must be uneducated? You built your idea of me on prejudice, Kevin, and that was your downfall." Alejandro watched his wife with pride. When she'd first proposed working undercover at the restaurant he suspected was laundering money, he'd been hesitant. But Natasha had insisted. She wanted to prove her worth, not through his influence, but through her own skill. For 2 years, she continued, you didn't just target me. You mocked Maria in the kitchen, saying Mexicans are only good for washing dishes. You harassed Jessica the hostess, claiming she should feel lucky to have a job. And you stole from customers, from staff, from anyone you could. Kevin made one last attempt. Wait, we can work something out, Mr. Moretti. I have information, valuable information about competitors. Alejandro's smile was cold as steel. Kevin, you're offering information to the man who already knows everything that happens in this city. My wife wasn't here to uncover secrets. She was here to collect evidence. Kevin finally understood. He hadn't been caught by accident. He had been studied, documented, and exposed piece by piece until the trap closed around him completely. Senator Richardson will be thrilled to learn that every one of your little transactions has been recorded, Natasha said smoothly, her voice calm but razor-sharp. As will Judge Morrison, Congressman Walsh, and that construction magnate you've been helping under the table for more than a year. Kevin's knees weakened instantly. Each name she spoke was another nail in his coffin, not just lost clients, but powerful people who would soon see him as the reason their secrets had been exposed. Please, he stammered, the arrogance gone from his tone. I have a family. Children. Funny you mention family, Alessandro said quietly, his words cutting deeper than any threat. Because that's exactly what you should have thought of before you laid a hand on mine. What Kevin didn't yet realize, but Natasha was about to make painfully clear, was that her 6 months of gathering evidence had uncovered far more than one corrupt manager. She had exposed an entire network of judges, politicians, and businessmen tied together by dirty money, all operating through the very restaurant he managed. Each insult Kevin hurled, every humiliation he forced her to endure, had only hardened her resolve. He thought he was breaking her. Instead, he was building the woman who would destroy him, and the corrupt empire behind him. Natasha calmly opened the sleek black briefcase she had carried every night. Kevin had seen it hundreds of times, always assuming it was filled with boring reports or complaint forms. Never once did he suspect that the subordinate he looked down on was compiling the evidence that would end him. Kevin, she said, flipping through papers, remember when you told me I should be grateful just to have a job? She stopped at a page. Specifically March 23rd, when Senator Richardson brought that campaign check you quietly deposited into the restaurant's personal account? Kevin's panic spiked. He yanked out his phone. I'll call Senator Richardson right now. He'll fix this. He has influence you can't even imagine. Alejandro and Natasha exchanged a knowing glance, almost amused. Kevin truly believed his powerful connections could save him, unaware that those same people were already in handcuffs. Go ahead, Alessandro said softly. But you might want to know, Senator Richardson was arrested earlier this morning for money laundering and tax evasion. Kevin's face drained of color. That's impossible. Operation Clean Plate, Natasha replied calmly, turning another page. 6 months of joint investigation by the FBI, IRS, and Chicago police. 12 politicians, 8 judges, 15 businessmen, all tied to the transactions you handled right here at Elegance. Kevin staggered backward, clutching the wall for balance. He had spent months feeling untouchable, rubbing shoulders with men who paid him bribes and flattered his ego. But one by one, his friends were collapsing. Judge Morrison, he whispered weakly. Arrested 2 hours ago, Alessandro said. Along with Congressman Walsh and your beloved construction partner. Natasha turned another page, her movements precise, almost surgical. Photos of suspicious checks, voice transcripts, wire transfers, even handwriting analyses of Kevin's forged signatures. You know what amazes me most, Kevin? She asked, pausing over one document. You even forged Alessandro's signature. The man standing right next to you, the one who has known your every move for months. That was the moment Kevin truly understood the scale of his downfall. He hadn't just cheated clients or taken bribes. He had unknowingly crossed the most dangerous man in Chicago and documented his own crimes while doing it. He collapsed to his knees. "Please, I have kids. An ex-wife who depends on alimony. I'll return everything. I'll testify." "Testify?" Natasha's tone was almost pitying. "Kevin, we don't need your testimony. We already have 2,000 pages of evidence, high-definition recordings, financial analyses, everything. You're not our witness. You're our final piece of evidence." For months, while he mocked and belittled her, Natasha and her team had studied him like a specimen under a microscope. Every movement tracked, every lie recorded, every connection traced. He thought he was manipulating a submissive employee, but in truth, he'd been feeding a federal operation designed to expose corruption at the highest levels. "Michael!" Alessandro called out. From the hallway emerged a composed man in a dark suit. "This is Michael Santos, my advisor," Alessandro explained. "He's also a federal prosecutor, and the one coordinating this operation with my wife." Kevin blinked in disbelief. You've eaten here before?" 43 times in the last 6 months, Michael confirmed with a polite smile. "Always watching, always recording. You served wine to the man preparing your criminal case, Kevin, and you even thanked me for the tip." The irony hit like a slap. Kevin had admired these men, mistaking observation for admiration. They hadn't been his allies. They were predators waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Natasha documented everything," Michael continued. "But we needed one final act, a crime committed directly in front of Alessandro. Something undeniable. The senator's bribe," Natasha said. $5,000 offered in front of 3 hidden cameras and 2 federal witnesses. Kevin's eyes widened. It hadn't been chance. The setup had been deliberate, a trap perfectly timed to seal his fate. "You gave us exactly what we needed," Alessandro said evenly. "A man in power, degrading a black woman while stealing from clients and enabling political corruption. The perfect crime, exposed by the very person you underestimated." Michael opened his briefcase, revealing a stack of signed arrest warrants. "Kevin Torres, you're under arrest for money laundering, tax evasion, racial discrimination, and conspiracy to commit federal fraud." As Michael read him his rights, Kevin looked up at Natasha, the woman he had mocked for years, standing poised, calm, and unshakably dignified. She wasn't just witnessing justice. She had engineered it. Outside, sirens blared through the glass walls of elegance. FBI vehicles surrounded the building in a blinding rush of red and blue, and as the handcuffs clicked shut around Kevin's wrists, he realized the cruelest truth of all. Every insult, every abuse, every smug remark had only fueled the quiet strength of the woman who had just destroyed him. Federal agents stormed through the restaurant's front doors, holding up search and seizure warrants. "No," Kevin whispered, his voice trembling as reality hit like a sledgehammer. "You can't do this to me." "I helped you. I cooperated. I facilitated the deals." "Facilitated?" Natasha's soft laugh sliced through him like glass. "Kevin, did you actually believe we were partners? That we shared some kind of criminal bond?" Alessandro motioned to his men, and they began leading Kevin toward the waiting agents. But Natasha lifted her hand slightly, requesting one last moment. "Before you walk out of our lives forever," she said calmly, "you deserve to understand exactly what just happened." She opened her briefcase once more, this time revealing photographs so damning that Kevin staggered back. The first photo showed him in a bar, boasting to other managers about how he kept the colored staff in line. The second showed him doctoring credit card receipts. The third captured the moment he had grabbed Jessica, the sommelier, against her will. 43 restaurants across Chicago, Natasha continued, her tone steady. All received these photos last night, along with a letter describing your methods of discrimination and corruption. Kevin's face went pale as paper. His career wasn't just ending, it was being obliterated. No restaurant in the city would ever hire him again. Your ex-wife received her copy too, Michael added with casual precision. She was very interested in the documents proving the $50,000 you embezzled from alimony funds. Kevin spun around in horror. "Jennifer, she wouldn't." "She already has," Alessandro replied coldly. Filed this morning for a full review of the divorce settlement. Turns out learning your ex-husband is a federal criminal tends to change custody terms. Kevin's body sagged, the full weight of his collapse finally crashing down. It wasn't just his job or his freedom being stripped away. It was his family, his reputation, every piece of the identity he'd built on arrogance and deceit. "Please," he pleaded through tears. "My children, they'll grow up knowing their father's a criminal." "Your children will grow up understanding that actions have consequences," Natasha said firmly. "And maybe that will stop them from becoming men like you." When the agents finally took him by the arms, Kevin looked back one last time. "Why didn't you ever tell me who you really were? Why pretend to be just a waitress?" Natasha smiled, the first genuine emotion she had shown all night. "Because I wasn't pretending, Kevin. I am a waitress, one with 2 college degrees, fluent in 4 languages, married to one of the most powerful men in the city, and the coordinator of the largest anti-corruption operation in Chicago's history." She watched as he was placed into the federal car. "The difference between us is that you looked at me and saw only skin color and profession. I looked at you and saw exactly who you were from the beginning." Outside, flashing lights painted the street red and blue. Natasha turned to Alessandro. "Has the press been informed?" "Channel 7 goes live in an hour," he confirmed. Headline reads, "Operation Clean Plate. Corruption Network Dismantled by Undercover Investigation." "Your photo will be on the Tribune's front page by morning." Michael approached, tablet in hand. News outlets were already exploding with the story. "Heroic Waitress exposes multi-million-dollar corruption scheme." Another headline read, "Black Woman Dismantles Chicago's Elite Power Network. 12 politicians. 8 judges, 15 businessmen?" Natasha murmured, scanning the list of arrests that kept updating in real time. 2 years of undercover work, 6 months of documentation, and Kevin Torres, the key that unlocked every door. What Kevin would never learn was that his downfall was being broadcast live to a classroom at Northwestern University, where Natasha had been invited to speak about social justice through undercover investigation. A week later, law, business, and journalism students sat in awed silence as her lecture played. The story of a woman once dismissed for her race and profession, now admired for dismantling an empire of corruption through patience, precision, and truth. 6 months later, Natasha stood on the grand stage of the Chicago Convention Center. Before her, over 2,000 people, mayors, CEOs, activists, students, rose in thunderous applause. The governor of Illinois presented her the National Anti-Corruption Award. "It is an honor," the governor declared, "to recognize a woman who not only exposed corruption, but redefined how prejudice and privilege sustain it." Meanwhile, Kevin Torres sat in a federal penitentiary in Terre Haute, serving 15 years for money laundering, racial discrimination, and conspiracy. His desperate attempts to reduce his sentence had failed. There was nothing left to offer that Natasha hadn't already exposed. His ex-wife, Jennifer, had won full custody of their children and overturned the divorce settlement entirely. The $50,000 he'd stolen, plus interest and penalties, had grown into a debt exceeding $200,000. For 2 years, Natasha began her award speech, her voice echoing through the packed hall. "I was invisible to a system that believed it already knew my worth, judged by my skin color and my profession. But invisibility can be the most powerful weapon when you know how to use it." The audience laughed softly, but their eyes shone with respect. Every major news channel, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, broadcasted her every word. In the front row, Alessandro watched with unhidden pride. Beside him, Michael Santos smiled, remembering the night Natasha first proposed the dangerous undercover mission. Now, she was one of the most influential women in America. "Operation Clean Plate," she continued, "was never just about arrests. It was about proving that prejudice isn't just immoral, it's strategically suicidal." Senator Richardson had been sentenced to 22 years in prison. Judge Morrison was disbarred and prosecuted. Congressman Walsh lost his fortune, his career, and his name. 15 powerful businessmen had been stripped of licenses, contracts, and respect they had guarded for decades. Every one of them, Natasha said passionately, underestimated not only me, but the ability of a black woman to be sharper, smarter, and more strategic than all of them combined. What Kevin would never learn was that Natasha had refused 6 university job offers from Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Northwestern, and others, to instead create something greater, the Williams Moretti Institute for Combating Corruption, a national center training investigators in undercover and ethical enforcement methods. 3 months after my case, she said proudly, Harvard Law, Yale, Stanford, and Northwestern all invited me to build programs on undercover justice. But instead, I chose to build something permanent. Alessandro had transformed Elegance into the first restaurant in the nation, officially certified as corruption-free by federal standards. The name now stood as a symbol, not of luxury, but of integrity. Maria, the same Mexican kitchen worker Kevin once mocked, was now the regional manager of 3 thriving restaurant branches. Jessica, the sommelier he harassed, had launched her own wine consultancy, quietly backed by Alessandro's funding. Kevin Torres once told me I should be grateful for having a job, Natasha said, letting the irony linger in the packed auditorium. Today, I create jobs for more than 300 people through our institute and the companies we help certify. The audience erupted in applause, but Natasha's expressions stayed measured. What began as one woman's fight had transformed an entire city. Chicago had even passed. The Natasha Williams Act, a groundbreaking law requiring every business with more than 20 employees to undergo independent audits for discrimination and corruption every 2 years. During those 2 years waiting tables, she continued, her voice steady but thick with emotion, I learned that true strength isn't found in shouting when we're wronged. It's found in turning humiliation into evidence, disrespect into documentation, and anger into strategy. Meanwhile, inside his prison cell, Kevin Torres received weekly letters from former clients, lawsuits piling up, each one demanding compensation. The very politicians he once bragged about knowing, Senator Richardson, Judge Morrison, Congressman Walsh, now publicly blamed him for exposing their crimes. He had become the perfect scapegoat, hated by all, defended by none. The man who once humiliated others now existed as the symbol of self-inflicted ruin. My husband once asked me if I felt sorry for them, Natasha said, a soft smile crossing her lips. And I told him, I feel sorry for anyone who mistakes social status for moral worth, who confuses privilege with intelligence, who believes that humiliating others makes them powerful. The crowd rose to its feet, applause rolling through the hall like thunder. On social media, Chick Natasha Williams had been trending worldwide for 3 straight days. College students tattooed her quotes. Young black women everywhere posted photos holding signs, reading, Invisibility is power. Kevin Torres thought for 2 years he was controlling a submissive waitress, Natasha said, pacing the stage with calm authority. In reality, he was being analyzed by a federal operation, bait for predators far bigger than he ever imagined. Alessandro, watching from the front row, noticed tears in the eyes of more than a few audience members. Natasha wasn't just his wife anymore. She had become a force of social transformation, a voice for millions who had been silenced by prejudice. The best revenge, Natasha concluded, her words ringing through the hushed auditorium, isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building something so extraordinary, so meaningful, that they spend the rest of their lives regretting that they ever underestimated you. When she stepped off the stage, the standing ovation lasted a full 5 minutes. Backstage, Alessandro met her with a quiet smile. How does it feel, he asked, to be the most inspiring woman in America? Natasha adjusted the golden plaque in her hands. It feels, she said softly, like turning 2 years of humiliation into a lifetime of purpose, Kevin. Torres would never know that his name had become a cautionary tale, studied in law schools as the ultimate example of arrogance turned self-destruction. His recorded words were now used to teach how prejudice blinds people to the truth standing right in front of them. His downfall had inspired new federal legislation on workplace discrimination. 6 months after his sentencing, 3 documentaries were already in production. Hollywood had purchased the film rights for a 7-figure deal, and Natasha Williams Moretti had become living proof that underestimating someone because of their race or role isn't just immoral. It's the fastest path to your own downfall. The waitress Kevin once demeaned was now a speaker at the United Nations, an anti-corruption advisor to 3 European nations, and the author of Strategic Invisibility, a best-selling book that stayed on the New York Times list for 15 consecutive weeks. While Kevin counted the endless days in his prison cell, Natasha woke each morning knowing she had transformed pain into power, humiliation into inspiration, and defeat into the most satisfying victory imaginable, not just against one man, but against an entire system that allowed arrogance to masquerade as authority.